Okay, so to solve this triangle, we've been given 3 pieces of information. Angle A is 48. This must be side length B because it's opposite angle B. That's 2.8. And we know that angle C is a right angle. Now, because it's a right triangle, there's certain pieces of information that we can use that only apply to right triangles. We could possibly use the Pythagorean Theorem, but we only know one of the sides. So that's not going to help us much at all. It's not going to help us at all. Because to use the Pythagorean Theorem, you'd need to know 2 of the sides to be able to find the third. So that won't work. We can find the third angle. How? What do we know about the angles of a triangle? Very basic geometry here, guys.
They all equal 180 degrees.
Exactly. So we can find angle B. Sorry, I've left my camera at home, so I can't record myself at the board. I'll go over here. The 3 angles in a triangle add up to 180 degrees. So we know 180 degrees equals angle A plus angle B plus angle C. And angle C is 90. So that's basically this angle and this angle must be complementary. But we could work out angle B. You could use 180 degrees minus the sum of the other 2. And I see most people do it that way, but on a calculator, this is right. This is quicker. That's the same thing. All you've done is distribute the negative. It's fewer buttons to press. So calculate angle B for me. It's basically going to be 90 degrees minus 48. It's going to be 42 degrees. So that's angle B. We now know this is 42 degrees. And we've still got to find 2 sides, A and C. Because this is a right triangle, there's 2 pieces of math we can use. In a right triangle, you can use the Pythagorean Theorem. And you can use very simple, basic right triangle trick. Otherwise known as SOHCAHTOA. We're not going to be able to use the Pythagorean Theorem because we only know one of the sides, so we've got to use SOHCAHTOA. So let's have a look at this. If I wanted to find side length A, its opposite angle A, or it's adjacent to angle B. Of those, I would rather use angle A because that was given information. Always use information you're given if you can, okay? I don't know the hypotenuse, so I can't use sine, can't use cosine because they both had hypotenuse in them. So I'm going to have to use the tangent. So I could say the tangent of 48 equals, so tangent equals opposite divided by adjacent. Tangent of 48 equals its opposite, which is A, divided by its adjacent, which is 2.8. So now just do a bit of math, cross multiply and divide. Well, you just need to cross multiply. 2.8 times the tangent of 48 degrees equals A. Stick that in a calculator and ignore what it says in the book. You're going to have homework from the textbook, but ignore their directions. I want all side lengths to 3 decimal places and all angles to 1 decimal place. And that's for this whole little mini unit. Okay, so stick that in your calculator and you will get, let me go find the calculator. You are going to need a calculator to do anything on this unit. You should get 3.1097. So 3 decimals, think about it. That's your 3rd decimal. It's followed by a 7. So that's going to round this up. So your answer is 3.1. That 0 will turn into a 1. You must write that 0. Do not write. That's only 2 decimals. If you're rounding and 3 decimals, you've got to give me that 3rd decimal, okay? So that's A. I think this is rounded up. Oh, that's not even rounded at all. Okay, that was A. Now let's have a look at how to find C. Let's use this information we were given. So C is the hypotenuse, 2.8 is adjacent to angle A. So using SOHCAHTOA again, I want the hypotenuse, so I possibly could use sine, possibly could use cosine, cannot use tangent. I know the adjacent, so I'm going to use cosine, okay? I could use the opposite. I could use this, but that was something I calculated myself. And if you can, use information you were given, because it's definitely not been rounded. So what we have here is the cosine of that angle, 48 degrees, is the adjacent, which is 2.8, divided by the hypotenuse, which is C, and now solve that for C. Cross multiply C times the cosine of 48 degrees equals 2.8. So now divide by cos 48. And just tap that into your calculator. Ooh, that's wrong. And you should get 4.18453. We want it to 3 decimals. It's followed by a 5, so we're going to have to go up. Okay, so that was that triangle solved. Let's see if it makes sense. It takes seconds to check if your answers make sense. Go back to your original sketch and write your information on. We said A was 3.110, and we said C was, I've lost it, 4.185. How do you know it makes sense? This is the biggest angle. So this should be the longest side. And then this was the smallest angle. So the side opposite it should be the shortest. Now you don't need to write that all over your work. You just look at it and think. The smallest angle is 42 and 2.8 is the shortest side. Okay, and 4.185 should be the longest side, and it is. So that made sense. Right, so welcome back. Hope you had a lovely spring break. Spring break. Wish it was. Okay, some of you missed the quiz. If you haven't taken it yet, just go and take it. It's still available. Ignore the due date. The due date just gets me writing you messages normally. It's still there. Just go take it. Okay, how to name the sides and angles of a triangle. Okay, always use Greek or uppercase letters for angles. Always use lowercase letters for side lengths. That's not optional, okay? If possible, well, it always is possible inside the triangle. What you want to do, if you had triangle PQR, let's say this one is P. So that QR, always, if possible, get the side that's opposite an angle and use the same letter. This should be lowercase p, that's uppercase P. That doesn't show very clearly on this. But this one would be side length R, and this one would be side length Q, because the sides are opposite that angle. Use the same letters. That isn't possible if you have a big shape that's, say, being divided up into triangles, maybe like this. Then you can't call this side length here, I say that A, because plenty of things, is this angle A or is that angle A? So should this be A or that be A? You can't do it like that. But when you're just given a triangle, if this is X, this is X. If this is Y, this is Y. This is Z, that's Z. Okay? Right. What we're going to do today is the law of sines. We've got 3 days on this little mini unit. We're going to do the law of sines and the law of cosines. And the law of sines is very simple, but it has one big headache that we look at tomorrow on it. So take some notes. The law of sines can be used when for any triangle. An oblique triangle just means the triangle that's not a right triangle. Okay. If you had a right, you can use it on a right triangle, but it's easier to just use SOHCAHTOA. And this is the law of sines that's written out here. And that's the formula. And when you use this formula, you only tend to use 2 parts of it. You can't use all 3. And how the law of sines works is if you have an angle and the side that's opposite it, you write that as a ratio. And it equals the ratio of the sine of any other angle divided by the length of the side that's opposite it. And this ratio would be for sine of this angle divided by that side length. Okay? You only use 2 pieces at once. For instance, you might use this green ratio and this pink ratio. You wouldn't use all 3. It's very simple. Now, this is one time I don't insist you write out the formula before you use it, because the formula is just named for triangles with sides of A, B, and C, and not all triangles are named like that. So let's dive straight in and just do an example. See, straight away, we can't use sine A over side length A, because nothing's called A. We've got L, M, and N here. Oh, this is round side lengths, the nearest tenth. No. 3 decimals. And angle measures to the nearest degree. No. To 1 decimal, please. And that's going to be the same on your homework. The book's going to give you those wrong instructions. We want 3 decimals on side lengths and 1 decimal on angles, please. Now, this is not a right triangle, so you cannot use the Pythagorean Theorem or basic trig. can't use those. They're for right triangles only. But if you notice that you have got an angle and an opposite side, you can use the law of sines. And that simply says the sine of an angle divided by the side length that's opposite it can be made equal to the ratio of any other ones. Now, at the moment, I don't know angle n or side length n, so I'm not going to do them next. But I do know this angle here, so I can find this side length here. You do the sine of the angle divided by the side that's opposite it. So now I've got an equation. It's got 4 things in it. I only don't know one of them, so I can solve it. So cross multiply n times the sine of 29 degrees equals 22 times the sine of 112 degrees. Then get n on its own by dividing. This line here is optional. I personally don't need to do it. I can move from here to here, working in my head, and if you can and get it right every time, then just do it in your head, that's fine. Okay, now tap that into a calculator and see what you get. Your calculator must be in degrees. And you should get that side length n equals 42.074. Okay? So let's have a look at our picture. What do we know so far? What do we still need to know? We've worked out that m equals 42.074. We still have to find this angle and this side length. We can find the 3 angles in a triangle will always add up to 180 degrees. So we know that angle n is going to be 180 degrees minus the other 2. Now this one, I'm not going to insist on 1 decimal place. Everything's whole numbers. Just stick with whole numbers. Stick that in the calculator if you need to, and you'll get 39 degrees. And now we can go back to this ratio we started with. Sine of 29 divided by 22 is going to be the sine of 39 divided by n. Okay? Use the law of sines again. Solve that for n by cross multiplying and dividing. You can take 2 lines if you want. I can do that in my head. But you should end up with this. I did that with cross multiplication and division, and I can do it in my head. If you need to actually take 2 lines of work to do that, then do the 2 lines of work. This must be written in your work. Whatever you're going to be typing into the calculator must be written down in your work. If it's not, you'll lose over half the points on the test. That's what we're looking for. Your work must be shown. Okay? And if you stick that one into a calculator, here's what I prepared earlier. Oh dear, that's rounded. I think it's 28.55 something. think it's 0.557. Okay. Put that on your triangle and just quickly check that the longest side is opposite the biggest angle and the shortest side is opposite the smallest angle. Okay, so this is the smallest angle. Double check that this is the shortest side, and it is. This is the biggest angle. This should be the longest side angle. Takes seconds to check that, and it's worth doing every time. Okay? Right, so using the law of sines is very, very easy. I want you to try it in this picture here. Off you go. I'll give you a couple of minutes. See what you can work out. When you have your answer for how tall the tree is, type it in. Here, I'm going to draw this as a triangle. I'll help you a little bit. So this is side length A. You're probably going to have to, in the process, work out angle C, because that's opposite this 10 foot. So we know that angle C, well, to find side length A, if we wanted to use the law of sines, we'd have to use the sine of 42 degrees over A and set that equal to something, but we don't have another pair. It'd be nice if we could set that equal to, a tree. It'd be nice if we could set that equal to, say, the sine of angle C divided by C. So we have to first of all work out how big angle C is. Angle C is 180 degrees minus 42 degrees minus this 100 degrees. So it's going to be 38 degrees. Is that right? No. No. Yeah? Yes, that's right. Okay. So we know that the sine of 42 degrees divided by A equals the sine of 38 degrees divided by side length C, which is 10 feet. Cross multiply and divide. So you get A times the sine of 38 equals 10 times the sine of 42 divided away by the sine of 38. Somebody's microphone's on. Can you dim it, please? Stick that in your calculator, and this is probably a rounded answer. You should end up with 10.9 feet. Okay. Easy enough. I hope so. 2 if you got it right. I hope more than you were working than that.
That's why.
Right, let's try another one now. So have a go at this one. This time you're trying to find the size of the angle. I'll give you a couple of minutes, see what you can get done. So on this one, it's any old triangle. You can't use the Pythagorean Theorem. You can't use SOHCAHTOA because it's not a right triangle. But you can use law of sines because can you see you've got when you know an angle and the side length opposite, when you know this pair, this opposite pair, you can set up the law of sines. So we know that the sine of 95 divided by 10 would be the sine of x divided by 5.76. So cross multiply and divide, and you'll end up with, it might take you 2 lines to get there, the sine of x will be 5.76 times the sine of 95 divided by 10. Now that isn't angle x itself, that's the sine of x. And if you, what answer you're going to get, if you tap that into your calculator now, you're going to get some value between -1 and 1. If you think about it, all sine waves, the highest value ever reaches 1, the lowest you ever reach is -1. So you're going to get a decimal there, and I think it's something to do with 0.5 stuff. And you need all of that stuff, depending on how good your calculator is, and save it into the calculator's memory. Because you don't want to use any rounded values in a calculation. That would be a disaster. You should have thought, oh, 0.573808. Anyone else get the same as me there? 573808146. Okay. Now to find x, you've got to unsign something. How you unsign something is you use the inverse sine function. So use the inverse sine and do not round that. Use as many decimals as you can be bothered to type in, but at least use at least 4 or 5 decimals, okay? Otherwise your answer, if you round a sine value and you only used it to say 0.574, your answer would be very wrong. Don't round, do not round. Okay, now use the inverse sine function to undo sine. I don't know how to re-fall on this calculator. Okay, no. And you should get 35.01619, which turns out to be 35.0 degrees. Okay, so that was the law of sines, and there's plenty more practice you can do for that in your homework. There's one other thing that I want to do in the lesson today, and that's finding the area of any old triangle. Okay, so write down this triangle. One of you typed in an answer there. Did you use the full sign or did you round the sign? I'm not going to say a name, but somebody just typed in an answer on the last question. I'm wondering if they rounded the sign value, and that's why their answer was just a little bit out, but it was enough out to be a concern. That was all. Oh, we've got someone very late. So we've covered the law of sines. Now let's look at the area of a triangle. If you look at what we've been given here, we've been given a side, an angle, and a side. We've been given side, angle, side, and we can find the area of any of those triangles, just knowing that the area of a triangle is 1/2 the base times the height. For this one, the area is going to be 1/2 of the base is this 22.1. Then we've got to multiply it by the height. Think about how we could calculate that height. It's hidden in this little right triangle there. where we know this angle is 38 degrees, this side is 19.7, and this side is not 22.1, it's part of 22.1. But if we have a right triangle, we can use SOHCAHTOA. We want to find this height, which is opposite the angle, and we know the hypotenuse. So if we want the opposite and we know the hypotenuse, I'm not using tangent and I'm not using cosine, I'm using sine. Sine of 38 degrees equals the opposite, which is your h, we're trying to calculate, divided by the hypotenuse, which is 19.7. Cross multiply that, and our height is 19.7 times the sine of 38 degrees. So that can go in here, 19.7 times the sine of 38 degrees. And you tap that into a calculator and you get your answer. But look at what we've got here. Let's look at this in a bit more detail, what we've actually written down here. We've actually just derived what we call the side angle side area formula for a triangle. Look what we've got. We've got 1/2 of one side multiplied by another side multiplied by the sine of the included angle. Remember, when you've been given side, angle, side, that's your angle that's between those two sides. We're going to have some of these examples on the quiz that you do on Thursday. You just type that into a calculator. I can't bother to pick up my calculator right now, but that will give you the area of that triangle. I'll give you some more of these to practice in your homework, probably tomorrow or Wednesday, but I don't have any in tonight's homework. Your homework for today is simply from the online textbook. So you can go to the online textbook through modules or just on the homepage of Canvas, find where it links you to the ebook and type in at the bottom of the page. So right down at the bottom down here, you'll have a little box, type in there, page 298. And if you're feeling a little lazy, because these get very repetitive, that should be 6, 7, 8 questions. How about just doing 2, 4, 6, 10, and 18? So I only do 5 of them. Okay, you don't have to do 1, 3, and 5. Just do 2, 4, 6, 10, and 18. That should be plenty. You don't need this. That's for, I'll just move that out of the way. That's for our calculators at school. Okay, any questions on this, or does it seem very easy? Okay, right, let's give me some feedback and then you can go, right? Type in, how easy does this look to you? Does it look really simple? 5 for yes, I've got it. 1, I haven't got a clue what's going on, and any number in between. Everybody type into chat now, please. Okay. Hopefully 8. Does that mean it's incredibly easy? That's funny. Okay, guys, if you want to leave and drop off the class now, you're welcome to. Please do your homework tonight, because tomorrow's lesson is more complicated and it's based on it.